Most people watch something once, and then they move on like it never happened. But you finish a show, and instead of feeling done, you feel this quiet pull to go back, like your body trusts the familiar more than the unknown. And it's awkward, isn't it? Because on the outside, it looks like you're stuck, like you're wasting time, like you can't let go. But on the inside, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like relief, like coming home to a room where the lighting is finally right. Stay with me, because the real reason you rewatch isn't about the show, it's about what your nervous system is trying to protect and what your identity is trying to preserve. And before you blame yourself, you're not broken. Your experience makes sense. This just isn't talked about enough. Rewatching isn't laziness. It's a kind of emotional strategy. A new show demands things from you. New characters to track, new risks to tolerate, new tension you didn't ask for. Even deciding what to watch can feel weirdly exhausting, like you're gambling with your own mood. And if you've already had a long day of making decisions, the last thing you want is one more uncertainty disguised as entertainment. So you pick something you already know. Not because you're bored, because you're tired, because the familiar story asks less from your brain. It lowers the mental processing cost. It's easy listening for your nervous system, but that's not the full story, because if it were only about easy, you'd just watch random background noise. Yet you don't. You rewatch specific things, the same shows, the same movies, sometimes the same scenes, which means you're not just avoiding effort, you're choosing a predictable emotional outcome. When you rewatch, you're not watching to find out what happens. You're watching because you already know how it ends, and more importantly, you know how it makes you feel when it ends. You're selecting a mood the way other people select food. Have you noticed how you reach for different comfort stories depending on what kind of day you had? On anxious days, rewatching is control. Your life might feel unpredictable. People switching up, plans changing, messages left on read, the future unclear. But the story behaves. It follows the rules. Nothing blindsides you. It's order you can actually trust. And here's where it gets interesting. Rewatching can also be a social substitute that doesn't punish you. Because real relationships can be unpredictable. They can drain you. They can demand a version of you that you can't always afford to perform. But familiar characters? They're steady. They don't suddenly decide you're too much. They don't misunderstand your tone. They don't leave. And the more you've watched them, the more your brain treats them like emotional landmarks, reliable signals that you're safe. Psychology has a name for this: parasocial relationships, those one-sided bonds that still satisfy real social needs. Does that sound familiar? But midway through, something flips. Because rewatching isn't only about comfort. Sometimes you rewatch because your brain is trying to catch something you missed. The first time you watch a story, you're busy surviving the plot, keeping up, predicting, bracing. The second time, you're finally free to notice the micro-expressions, the subtle betrayals, the quiet tenderness in a line that didn't land before. Familiarity creates space for depth, which means rewatching can be less like repetition and more like returning to the same mirror at different ages. Because you're not the same person you were the first time you watched it. The scene didn't change. You did. And that's the part most people miss. To someone else, it looks like you're looping. But to you, it's refinement. It's re-experiencing something stable while you evolve inside it. When was the last time a moment in a show hit you harder on the third watch than it did on the first? So what does this say about you? It might say you're someone who values emotional accuracy over novelty. A lot of people chase stimulation to feel alive, new plot twists, new chaos, new noise. But you? You chase something quieter. Emotional reliability, a known rhythm, a controlled intensity, a safe ending, and in a world that constantly rewards new that can look like a flaw, but it's often an adaptation. Rewatching is what people do when their inner world needs steadiness, not more input, when they have had to be on all day, when their mind is overloaded and they need something that restores a sense of self-control and balance. And sometimes, rewatching is how you protect your identity, because familiar stories hold familiar versions of you. The you that existed when you first loved that show, the you that laughed at that line before life got heavier, the you who still believes, at least for 22 minutes, that things can resolve cleanly. Where do you invest your emotional energy? Are you playing the same game as everyone else, or a different one? Maybe the real upgrade isn't forcing yourself to stop rewatching. Maybe it's recognizing what kind of person rewatching reveals, someone who knows their emotional needs well enough to meet them on purpose. If you want, tell me your comfort show, and I'll tell you what it quietly says about the way you handle stress, connection, and control.